Hi, welcome to our channel where we share the most intriguing stories. She said I had to follow her rules. Funny considering I don't even live in her HOA. When she crashed my backyard party with fake security, it sparked a wild chain of events. A brawl, arrests, a fiery revenge attempt, and her ultimate downfall. Buckle up, this story gets insane. When I bought this land, I knew exactly what I was doing. I wasn't just buying a house, I was buying freedom. 2.5 acres of ungoverned peace, tucked just outside the iron grip of any homeowners association, no random inspections. No letters about my lawn height, no busybodies telling me what color my shutters should be. I'd been living under HOA rule once before, and I swore to myself, never again. So, when this property came on the market, bordered on one side by Forest Vista's HOA development, but sitting proudly outside their jurisdiction, I didn't hesitate. The place needed work, sure. The previous owner had let the barn fall into disrepair, the fence was half rotted, and the house had seen better days. But it was mine. Every nail, every board, every blade of grass. Over time, I turned the backyard into a personal haven, large enough for bonfires, kids' soccer games, and weekend BBQs. My friends loved it. Their kids had room to run wild. We'd set up a projector for outdoor movies. And, most importantly, we could do all of it without some self-appointed neighborhood monarch breathing down our necks. But apparently, my independence was a thorn in someone's side. Her name was Cindy Banks, the reigning president of Forest Vista HOA. A name spoken in low tones and clenched jaws by my neighbors who did live under her rule. Cindy didn't like outliers. She had approached me 3 separate times over the past year with glossy brochures and a stiff smile, inviting me, no, pushing me, to voluntarily join the HOA. It would really simplify things for everyone, she said once, eyes scanning my backyard like it was already under her rule. Each time I declined, politely at first, then firmly. The last time, I told her outright that I bought this land precisely because I didn't want people like her telling me how to live. She hadn't taken it well. I remember the way her lips tightened, her expression flickering just for a second, offended that anyone would dare resist her. But she turned away without a word and disappeared behind her gated fence. I figured that was the end of it, that she'd gotten the message and would find some other poor soul to micromanage. But I should have known better. People like Cindy don't back off, they regroup. And watching me live freely next to her little empire that probably ate at her every single day. It was one of those golden Saturdays that begged for a celebration, the kind where the breeze was soft, the grill was hot, and everything in life felt just a little bit lighter. I'd spent the morning setting up tables under the old oak near the back of the yard, stringing up lights, and icing down coolers full of beer and soda. By early afternoon, friends started arriving with kids in tow, folding chairs in hand, and covered dishes that would feed twice as many as we invited. The scent of barbecue filled the air, mingling with laughter and the distant squeals of children chasing each other through the grass. My backyard was buzzing with life, but never out of hand. The music was upbeat but quiet enough not to disturb anyone beyond my fence. The kids played soccer near the garden beds. Some of the adults lounged in hammocks or gathered around the fire pit, exchanging stories, passing drinks. It wasn't a rager, it was a peaceful, joyous slice of life, a reminder of why I'd worked so hard to build this place. It felt like home, my home. And still, I couldn't shake the feeling I was being watched. From the far corner of my yard, beyond the hedgerow that separated my land from the Forest Vista development, I noticed her, Cindy. She was standing perfectly still on her back deck, arms crossed, her face stiff with disapproval. She didn't wave. She didn't look away. She just stood there like a sentinel, staring down at us as if monitoring a security breach. I made eye contact for half a second, then looked away and shrugged it off. Let her glare. I wasn't breaking any laws. This was private property, and I owed her nothing. The sun dipped lower, the lights strung through the trees began to glow, and someone lit the tiki torches. The party shifted into that sweet spot where the kids were settling with marshmallows and the adults were mellowed by food and firelight. We played cornhole, shared old memories, and lost track of time. I had just refilled my drink when I heard the unmistakable sound of a gate creaking open, a sound that shouldn't have been there, because we hadn't used that gate all day. I turned, confused, and saw the small wooden gate at the side of the yard swinging inward. And stepping through it were 3 large men, wearing black polo shirts, each one bearing the same bold white text across their chests, Forest Vista HOA security. My blood ran cold. This wasn't a joke. They weren't neighbors. They weren't guests. They were here for something else entirely. They walked in like they owned the place. 3 men, stocky builds, late 30s to early 40s, all wearing matching HOA security polos like they were part of some official task force. One of them held a clipboard. Another had a radio strapped to his chest. The third wore mirrored sunglasses despite the fading evening light. They didn't knock, didn't call out. Just opened my gate, crossed my yard, and stopped near the fire pit, where several of my guests were seated. The sudden shift in atmosphere was palpable. Conversations quieted, heads turned, parents called for their kids. It was like someone had pulled the needle off the record. The man with the sunglasses stepped forward, puffing out his chest like a mall cop on a power trip. "Party's over," he announced loudly, scanning the crowd. "You're in violation of regional noise and occupancy codes. This gathering is unauthorized." I stood, incredulous, setting down my drink. "I'm sorry, what did you just say?" "This property is in direct violation of community conduct regulations," the man continued, as if reading from a script. "This number of people exceeds the acceptable limit under Forest Vista guidelines. We're authorized to shut this down." I stepped forward, leveling my voice. "This isn't Forest Vista. This is my land, private property. I'm not in your HOA. You have no authority here." The guy with the clipboard flipped through a few pages. "You are within the established regional zone, which falls under HOA Environmental Impact Protocol. We've received multiple complaints about loud music, smoke emissions, and unregulated vehicle parking. We're conducting an inspection as outlined under Subdivision Code 9.3. I couldn't help but laugh. A short, sharp burst. "Are you serious right now? That's not a real law." "There is no subdivision code here because I'm not part of any subdivision." I looked around at my guests. Everyone here is a friend or family. We're having dinner on private land. You're the ones trespassing. That's when one of them stepped closer, too close, and reached out, clamping a hand down on my shoulder like he was about to escort me somewhere. That was his mistake. Before I even had a chance to react, my cousin Jay, former Army, always wired for tension, was on his feet. "Get your damn hands off him," he barked, moving fast. The man released me instantly, but squared up like he wanted a fight. "We're enforcing community order," the man growled. "Back off." "You're not police," I snapped. "You're not even licensed. You're thugs in matching shirts." The third man, nervous now, reached for his radio. "We've got resistance," he muttered into it. That was all it took. The temperature spiked. My friends, most of them ex-military, first responders, construction types, weren't about to let armed strangers intimidate us on our own turf. We weren't the ones out of line, and it was about to become very clear who was. What happened next wasn't planned. It wasn't chaotic either. It was fast, instinctive, and precise. The kind of response that happens when the wrong people try to assert authority in the wrong place at the wrong time. The second the man raised his radio and muttered something about resistance, Jay moved. He knocked the device clean out of the guy's hand with a swift, open-palmed smack that echoed across the yard. The radio skidded across the lawn and disappeared beneath a picnic table. The man lunged toward him in response, but Jay sidestepped and used his momentum against him, sending him stumbling onto the ground. That's when chaos truly ignited. The man in sunglasses tried to grab me again, but this time I was ready. I shoved him back, hard enough to make him lose his footing. He crashed into one of the folding tables, knocking over a tray of ribs and a bucket of beers, and went down with a curse. 2 of my other friends, Greg and Luis, moved in. Greg grabbed the third security guy, twisting his arm behind his back, while Luis kicked the clipboard away like it was a live grenade. The guests didn't run. They circled in, alert and ready, protecting the kids and blocking off escape routes. It wasn't a mob. It was containment. Someone yelled, "Call the cops," and I heard my sister's voice from near the porch, already on the phone. "Yes, officers, we have trespassers on private property, pretending to be security. There's a physical altercation in progress. Please, send someone now." Sunglasses guy tried to scramble to his feet, but Jay was already on him, pinning him down with a knee and zip-tying his wrists using the plastic ties from a utility kit in my garage. Another guest tossed Jay 2 more ties, and within seconds, all 3 men were face down on the grass, wrists bound like they were the ones who had hosted a riot. One of them kept shouting, "You're attacking representatives of community law. This is illegal. You're going to jail." But no one listened, because we all knew the truth. They weren't the law. They weren't deputies. They weren't even certified guards. They were HOA bullies, sent on a mission by someone who'd grown far too comfortable playing queen of a suburban kingdom, and tonight she'd pushed too far. We stepped back, letting the men lay there in the dirt while we waited for the police. Some of the kids peeked from the windows, eyes wide. The adults started murmuring, half nervous, half furious. My property, my party, my people, violated. And all for what? Because Cindy Banks didn't like not having control. I looked around, taking in the scene. The lights still glowing gently in the trees, the scattered dishes, the overturned table, the zip-tied intruders. The party wasn't over. It had just shifted into something else, something she never saw coming. The flashing red and blue lights lit up the treetops like a storm had rolled in from the county line. The first cruiser skidded up the driveway, followed by a second and a third. I stepped forward, hands raised, not in fear, but in clarity. I had nothing to hide. The 3 HOA imposters were still on the ground, their wrists secured with zip ties, one of them muttering to himself about lawsuits and misinterpretations. The first officer out of the car was tall, calm, and focused. He took one look at the scene, the torn-up table, the spilled food, the shaken guests, and 3 grown men on the ground, and turned to me. "You the homeowner?" "I am," I said. "Ryan Wells. This is my property." These men entered without permission, claimed authority they don't have, and assaulted me. More officers fanned out, checking IDs, separating people, starting to take statements. I motioned to my sister, who handed her phone to one of the officers. Video already queued up to the moment the men stormed through the gate, uninvited and unannounced. They watched silently as the recording played. The shouting, the aggression, the physical contact. When the video ended, the officer exhaled. "All right, this is trespassing, unlawful impersonation of authority, and attempted assault, possibly more. These guys are done." He nodded to his colleagues. The men were read their rights, then lifted off the ground and placed into handcuffs for real this time. None of them resisted. Whatever fight they had came and went with the camera footage. Then, like some final insult, a sleek black SUV rolled up. The headlights cut through the night like blades, and out stepped none other than Cindy Banks, clipboard in hand, her blazer pristine, her expression sour. She looked around, trying to feign surprise. "Oh dear, what's going on here?" she asked in that syrupy, manipulative tone I'd come to loathe. An officer turned to her. "Ma'am, and you are?" "I'm the president of the Forest Vista HOA," she said proudly. "I was informed there were community violations occurring adjacent to our jurisdiction. I merely asked my security team to investigate. I had no idea it would turn into this." The officer raised an eyebrow. "You gave them permission to enter this property?" She hesitated just a beat too long. Yes, but only to document, not to—" "That's enough," the officer cut in. "You understand this property is not under HOA governance, correct?" She flinched at that. "That's debatable. It's on the fringe of our boundary. Technically, there's overlap." "No, there isn't," I interrupted, stepping forward. "I have the deed. I have the county maps. You've been told that 3 times already. This is private land, and you have no jurisdiction here." One of the officers radioed something in, and another began jotting down Cindy's full name and statement. "Did you instruct your security detail to enter this land, detain or confront anyone here, or physically engage the homeowner?" Cindy's mask finally cracked. Her lips curled as she spat. "I won't allow lawlessness next to our community." That party was a disturbance. There are rules, standards. "There are also laws," the officer said flatly, "and you may have just broken several." She was not arrested on the spot, but she might as well have been. Her statement was taken. She was told not to leave the county, and as she stood there, arms tightening around her clipboard, I saw something I hadn't expected. Not fear, not shame, rage. The kind that didn't accept consequences, the kind that planned revenge. And I knew then and there that we hadn't seen the last of Cindy Banks. I thought maybe for a moment that the storm had passed. The men were gone. The party wound down after midnight, quieter but tighter knit than ever. Everyone rallied to help me clean up, to put things back together. But that sense of peace? It was brief. Within 72 hours, I received the first court notice. The state was formally pressing charges against the 3 so-called HOA security officers for criminal trespass, impersonation, and misdemeanor assault. I was listed as the primary complainant and key witness. Alongside it came something else, a summons to provide testimony in a related case, State of Texas versus Cynthia Elaine Banks. The DA's office wasn't playing around. With the footage we provided, combined with Cindy's on-scene admission to ordering the incursion, they had everything they needed to charge her as the orchestrator of the incident. What began as HOA harassment was now framed as organized unlawful entry and incitement to violence on private land. And that carried real weight. The court proceedings unfolded with astonishing speed. At the arraignment, Cindy still had that stiff posture, chin up, blazer immaculate, acting like this was a minor misunderstanding. Her lawyer tried to argue that the men acted independently, that Cindy never authorized force, that the event was misconstrued community outreach. But it all crumbled the moment the body cam footage from the responding officer was played. "I gave the order," she said clearly, caught on tape. "I won't allow lawlessness next to our community." That single sentence detonated in the courtroom like a firecracker. The judge narrowed his eyes. The DA barely had to say anything. Cindy had condemned herself with her own words. One by one, the security contractors flipped. Under pressure, they admitted they'd been paid under the table, not through the HOA's official channels, but directly by Cindy. They weren't licensed, insured, or even background checked. They had no legal standing to enforce anything, and they knew it. But the money was good, and Cindy had promised protection. That protection didn't hold up in court. Over the next 2 weeks, witness testimonies stacked like bricks. My neighbors, many of whom had silently suffered under Cindy's rule for years, came forward. HOA board members distanced themselves from her, claiming she acted unilaterally. Her iron grip on Forest Vista was disintegrating in real time. Finally, the judgment came. Cindy was officially removed from her position as HOA president, fined $25,000 for her role in the incident, issued a restraining order that barred her from contacting me or stepping within 300 feet of my property. Worse, at least for her, the county initiated an audit of Forest Vista HOA, placing it under temporary third-party supervision due to abuse of internal power and failure of oversight. The look on her face as the sentence was read was something I'll never forget. Not remorse, not disbelief. No, Cindy looked like a queen, unseated. Cold fury in her eyes, lips pressed tight, like she still couldn't fathom that someone had stood up to her and won. For most people, this would have been the end of the story. Vindication, closure. But I knew better. People like Cindy don't just fade away quietly. They don't accept defeat. They scheme. They wait. And sometimes they come back. It had been just over a week since the final gavel fell in court. The backyard was slowly returning to normal, charcoal stains washed away, a few busted lawn chairs replaced. Friends stopped by more often now, dropping off pies or just checking in, offering congratulations and quiet nods of solidarity. I thought, foolishly, that maybe Cindy had finally accepted reality, that she'd lick her wounds in silence and disappear back into the gated kingdom she no longer ruled. Then came the fire. It started around 2:17 a.m. according to the timestamp on my security cameras. I was dead asleep until the shriek of my motion sensor alarm jolted me awake. I grabbed my phone, eyes still adjusting to the glow of the screen, and opened the security app. What I saw made my blood turn to ice. 2 figures in black hoodies and ski masks crept through the rear perimeter of my property. They moved fast, careful to stay low, avoiding the main lights but not the cameras, because they didn't know I had thermal backups now. I watched as one of them hurled what looked like a bag of trash over the fence and toward my garden. A second later, flames erupted, a burst of orange licking at the dry brush and creeping toward my wooden fence. I threw on jeans and sprinted outside with the extinguisher. Thankfully, the fire hadn't caught hold. It burned hot but quick, scorching the fence post and melting the edge of a decorative chair. I smothered it before it could spread, coughing through the smoke, heart racing with a different kind of adrenaline than I'd ever felt. It wasn't random. This wasn't some punk teens messing around. This was a message. I ran back inside and pulled up the high-resolution feed, zooming in on the figures. It was hard to see their faces, but then one of them turned just slightly, pulling back his hood to adjust something. The camera caught a glimpse of his profile. Square jaw, crooked nose, a shaved head. It was one of the fake security guards, the same guy who'd slammed into my table 2 weeks ago and claimed to be enforcing community code. And then came the final blow. As the second figure turned to follow him back over the fence, her hood slipped, just enough. Blonde hair, tight bun, short, efficient movements, even grainy and half obscured. I knew who it was. Cindy. She was there, not orchestrating from afar, not hiding behind emails and HOA newsletters. She was on my land, with an arsonist, trying to damage my home, my life. I didn't hesitate. By 3 a.m., the police were at my gate, this time with fire investigators and 2 detectives. I handed over the footage, walked them through the damage, and provided all the court documentation from the previous case. The officers watched the video in silence. When it ended, one of them muttered, "Jesus, they didn't need more." Within 24 hours, arrest warrants were issued for both the ex-guard and Cindy Banks. This wasn't trespassing anymore. It was felony-level arson, conspiracy, and violation of a court-issued restraining order. Add to that malicious intent to intimidate a witness, and suddenly, we weren't dealing with suburban politics. We were talking serious prison time. I stood at the edge of my property the next morning, staring at the blackened patch near the fence, smoke still lingering in the air. And for the first time, I felt something I hadn't felt during this whole insane ride. Not anger, not fear, pity. Because Cindy didn't just lose the game, she'd set fire to the board. The courtroom was quieter this time. No media, no reporters. Just a few faces from the neighborhood sitting in the benches behind me. People who'd watched the drama unfold from across fences and driveways, some of whom had been under Cindy's thumb for years. They came not out of curiosity, but out of quiet support, maybe even closure. Cindy sat 2 rows ahead, her once polished appearance dulled by the weight of what she was facing. Her lawyer kept whispering to her, but she barely reacted. Her posture was rigid, jaw clenched so tight I could see the muscles twitch from my seat. The ex-security officer sat on the other side of the room, hunched, eyes locked on the floor. Whatever loyalty he had to Cindy evaporated the moment the handcuffs clicked shut. This was no HOA dispute anymore. This was State of Texas versus Cynthia Elaine Banks. The charges were stacked: conspiracy to commit arson, attempted property damage, trespassing in violation of a protective order, and intimidation of a witness. The footage was undeniable. Her voice could be heard whispering instructions. Her face, though partially obscured, had been matched by facial recognition. It was airtight. Her defense tried everything: stress, mental strain, false identification, even claiming the footage was deepfake technology. The judge didn't buy a word of it. The prosecution methodically dismantled every excuse. This was cold, calculated revenge. Plain and simple, when the verdict came, it hit like a thunderclap. Guilty on all counts. The sentence: 1 year in county jail, no possibility of early release, plus restitution for damages to my property and court costs. She was immediately remanded into custody, hands cuffed, eyes wide with disbelief as she was led out the side door. There was no final glance, no apology, no acceptance. The man who helped her, he got a reduced sentence for cooperation, 6 months probation, community service, and a criminal record that would haunt him longer than any jail time. But Cindy, she'd burned every bridge she had. And now, the system she once ruled was crumbling behind her. Within weeks, Forest Vista HOA was placed under temporary county receivership. The board dissolved itself in a panic, claiming they'd been misled by Cindy for years. An independent committee was installed to review and rewrite the HOA's bylaws. For the first time since its formation, Forest Vista wasn't a kingdom. It was a community again. Meanwhile, back home, we rebuilt. The scorched fence was replaced with treated cedar, twice as thick. New cameras went up, visible this time with motion-activated lights that lit the yard like a stadium. And just 3 weeks after Cindy's sentencing, I hosted another backyard party. Same string lights, same fire pit, same friends. But this time, something different. People from Forest Vista came too. Neighbors I hadn't spoken to before brought dishes, folding chairs, even a bottle of bourbon. One man came up, nodded, and said quietly, "We should have stood up to her a long time ago. You gave us the guts to do it." I didn't know what to say to that, so I just clinked glasses with him and passed him a plate. At the front gate, I put up a new sign, simple, handmade, stained wood with carved letters. Private property, Forest Vista, not welcome. Underneath, in smaller print, law is the only authority here. Ask Cindy. And on the fence above it, a small flag flapping in the breeze, embroidered with, "The police already know the way. Want to try again?" That night, as the laughter echoed across my land and music played under a sky full of stars, I realized this wasn't just about reclaiming my space. It was about reminding people that authority has limits. That fear only rules when good people stay silent, and most of all, that sometimes the best revenge isn't anger or violence. It's a party, on your own terms, with the fire pit burning bright and not a damn clipboard in sight.